Hello, this is Brian Funk, and thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast. I'm very excited to announce that my new book, The 5-Minute Music Producer, is now available in paperback form, a real book that you can hold and touch and turn to any page you like in a second. And it's a pretty big book, 629 pages of activities, exercises, and wisdom I've learned over the years. It's available on Amazon.com. The 5-Minute Music Producer is 365 music-making activities that will help with your songwriting and music production. It'll help you fight writer's block, make more music, write better lyrics, develop solid workflows, learn techniques for generating ideas, and finish more music. It's like having your very own music production personal trainer giving you ideas and challenges each day. And the best part is the challenges are quick and easy, and they only take a few minutes. So even if you don't have a lot of time, you can spend 5 minutes and advance your music production skills. There's no better time to improve your music than now. Imagine where you'll be after a year of these activities. The 5-Minute Music Producer has hit the #1 new release in the music songwriting and music recording and sound categories on Amazon. So check out the 5-Minute Music Producer, 365 music-making activities. It's available on Amazon.com, or you can go to brianfunk.com/book. Hello and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I have Tommy Zee from Making Music for Brands. If you've been listening to this show for a while, you might recognize that name because Tommy's been on a couple times. We always have great conversations, and I was getting some emails from Tommy that inspired me. I reached out to him and I said, hey man, we got to catch up. So that's what we're doing today. So welcome, Tommy, to the show. Tommy, great to have you.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Always good to be here. And we spoke just before you press record, and we said how naturally this third, I think, conversation on your podcast has come about, and how I said that I really dig this vibe you have, which is, you're just talking to people that you find inspiring, and it's a very natural conversation. And it's something that I'd love to implement in my own life, just have this show where I get to bring people like you onto my podcast. And just have these conversations. So, but anyway, thank you for having me, dude. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this chat because I think we always go deep and wide. And I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm really glad to have you, and I love all the work you do, and any excuse to catch up is great. I mean, you're already kind of swimming in the deep end to begin with, so it's no wonder when we start these conversations, we have to kind of stop and hit record because it's already taking off into some pretty interesting territory. And I thought I'll just kind of tell anyone listening what kind of spurred this is you're doing, I guess this is sort of like a New Year's resolution maybe, or just a fresh start thing, but you're doing a newsletter. Every day you're sending out some writing, some thoughts. And one of the first ones you sent out was eat lunch alone. And I was eating lunch alone at my job when I got this email, and I kind of had to laugh and let you know, because you're kind of getting at maximizing your time, I guess, and it's something I do myself where I try to get a little bit done in some of those cracks. And there are opportunities to socialize, which are good and you should take advantage of. And there are certainly groups and people that I like to catch up with on a daily basis. But sometimes it's nice also to use that time to get yourself going for the day. And I was telling you earlier, I like to add up the minutes and realize if I got a half hour, 40 minutes, 5 days a week, that really adds up fast to a couple hours, and you can make a big dent on a project. And it also, for me, when I get home, I've already started. So I'm already kind of on the treadmill already. So I don't have that, what am I going to do today? Where should I start? Where should I begin? And that's valuable too. So I had to reach out to you, and all the other emails I've been getting are really great. I wrote down a bunch of the things you mentioned that we could probably talk about too. But
yeah, let's do that.
I love what you're doing.
Thanks, brother. Really appreciate it. I did make a vow that I would write for 30 days straight, because I believe that in the next chapter of my journey, writing is going to be something that underpins or is the starting point for everything else. And in the past, my writing has been sporadic. So, in other words, when I'm writing in my journal about the fact that I'm not happy with a corporate career and I want to figure out how to exit this giant, machine and just sail out into uncertain waters of like creative, artistic life, I would write in my journal like pages and pages, and then when I decided to teach about my journey of like making a living as a music producer in the world of brands, I did a significant amount of writing in order to clarify, like, okay, what are the 7 things or stages that people need to know? You're just taking things from behind your eyes and putting them in front. You have so much knowledge, every one of you listening, like all of us have so much knowledge, but it's unsorted, it's uncategorized. It's like a hard drive where like bits are scattered all over your brain. And I always say that you cannot sort what you cannot see. And so writing is a way of getting things from behind your eyes to in front of your eyes. And it's only when things are in front of your eyes that you can categorize, that you can prioritize, that you can put things into a hierarchy of important, unimportant, first, second, third, right? So writing, I believe, is a habit that I want to habituate. So I decided to do it daily for 30 days straight because I believe if I write for 30 days straight, hopefully I can continue with this and everything can be born of that simple habit, which is like if I decide to turn Eat Lunch Alone into a video, it can become a YouTube video. If I decide to turn it into a podcast episode, I can turn it into a podcast episode. But it all starts with writing. And just for some context for you guys listening, the whole Eat a Lunch Alone thing comes from my personal experience of like having to eat lunch in a corporation with a bunch of coworkers for whom this lunch hour was like the highlight of the day. Because we're all sitting in goddamn cubicles, everyone hates their life. And so this descent into the food court of this, giant skyscraper was like the highlight of the day for everyone. And having this Chinese food or Thai food or whatever it is, like, what are we going to have today? And I just realized at a certain point that as much as a lot of these folks are unhappy, they are perpetuating their identity of being stuck there by being stuck there and like having lunch together and complaining together and just reinforcing each other about how, yes, we're all stuck here. Life sucks, but oh, this pad thai is great. And soon we're going to go up there and see Bob again and see Jill and we're going to get on the conference call. And everyone's like, yeah. And they all commiserate, And I was just like, man, if I ever had a chance of getting out of here, because it's kind of like a drug. You're like, yeah, Bob and Jill. I mean, come on. Right. Seriously, And you get into this gossip and like, but the problem with that is like you're like further embedding yourself in that environment and that identity. And so the whole Eat Lunch Alone thing, is a part of my personal experience when I decided that I want to leave the corporate life and become a creator. I realized that I actually have to like separate myself. I have to cut this umbilical cord, if only for 30 or 45 minutes a day, to like see something outside of this food court and this like corporate head office, like see something else, like to remind myself that a world of possibilities exists out there and that it's not going to get unlocked if I'm sitting there with Bob and Jill complaining about, Richard and Susan. Like, and so Eat Lunch Alone was literally my personal experience of like leaving the lunch hour for myself, exiting the head office, writing in my journal saying, why are you unhappy? You wanted a stable job. You wanted a business card. This is great. Your family loves it. Like it's stable. But something in my soul was like, telling me, dude, you just kind of follow the default path. You finish school, you got a job. But, 3 years later, you're feeling some dissonance. Look into that. Look into that. Like, what feels wrong about sitting in this green cubicle? What feels wrong about taking the subway every day to the 37th floor of TD Tower on Bay Street in Toronto? And I could not explore those questions if I was busy complaining about my place with Bob and Susan. And so, like, eating lunch alone was honestly the most practical way of separating myself from the environment, inspiring myself with the possibility of a change, and coming back to the office after my lunch hour feeling like, hey, I'm no longer 100% here. Like, I'm here and I'll spend the rest of the afternoon doing what belongs to me. But there's an inner world being born right now, which I'm building brick by brick every lunch hour alone, which is going to get stronger and stronger so that I no longer fully identify with my current circumstances. But I am now like coming here, but it's like the thing in the scriptures that says that, be in this world, but not of it. The lunch alone is that. Like, I no longer identify with my full-time day job, like 100%. I'm not participating in extracurricular activities of complaining. I'm just here to do my job, but I'm already working on the next chapter of my life. And really, the leading lunch alone was a huge kind of like kickstart for that. So for anyone contemplating any change of scenery, of environment, of circumstances even, I think no matter how you decide to do it, the entire idea is just separate yourself, even if for half an hour, from your current circumstances. Change your perspective, literally. Like, don't be looking at the same walls. Fix your gaze on a horizon somewhere else, and just think about how precious this life is, how short it is, and how many possibilities there are that you may be unaware of because you've just kind of like embedded yourself fully into something, and your soul is now telling you, well, I have other things in store for you. And you're just like, yeah, but the Thai food with Bob and Susan, it just feels so comfortable to complain.
Well,
Anyway, I don't want
it
to.
is comforting because it validates your own frustrations in the situation. Like, yeah, you're right.
Absolutely.
And it sort of takes it off your shoulders too, because now it's these forces greater than us and we can't do anything about it. It's not just
Absolutely.
me, it's also everyone else here.
Absolutely. And you certainly don't want to, you want to pick your company very carefully, company of people that you surround yourself with. Because, yeah, like you said, some other people might not be happy either in that situation, but because they're not going to do anything about it, they're actually going to try to keep you behaving the same way, because otherwise you become dangerous. Like,
Yeah.
how dare you exit out of here? Like, to even think of it. I mean,
Right.
it just shows that it's possible. And then some people might be mad at you for doing that. I actually didn't have that. I actually had very supportive folks. Maybe I really stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, I think people realize like that I'm a bit of a chameleon. I could do this, sure, but truly my identity and my essence put me in a different place. Like, they kind of felt like, oh, you don't really belong in this building, dude. So luckily no one, I never felt like anyone was trying to hold me back other than myself, really. Like, and I think that's usually,
Often the case. Yeah.
that's often the case, is like, there's enough opposition in your own self. And I think that's the biggest thing to contend with, which is more insidious and more dangerous than like even the external world opposition.
Yeah.
because it's sneaky. Like you have a way of rationalizing things and, lying to yourself and whatever, making excuses. So another good argument for eating lunch alone, like you have to get to know yourself. And
Mm.
it's kind of hard to have a conversation with yourself if it's happening behind your eyes.
Mm. Well, we
There
spend
are
so much of our
things,
time telling ourselves stories, right? So, even if you see Bob in the office and Bob just kind of walks by you real quick and doesn't nod and say hello like he normally does, you might be like, "Whoa, is Bob pissed at me? What did I do? It's this thing." Now you've got this whole narrative. Meanwhile, Bob just is having trouble with the copy machine and needs to run over to the other one, and he's
yeah, totally.
running out of time. But we write that whole story, but kind of everything is like that. Everything that we perceive, we're telling us a story. And I think if you're going to sit there and commiserate, you are kind of adding chapters to the story that there's really nothing we can do about this. This is the way it is. When you're
Yeah.
doing your thing on the side, when you're trying to do something productive, even if it's to fix the problem at work, you're now writing this story called, I'm doing something about this. I'm going to make a change. I'm going to try to see what I can do to fix this. And we live
I
off
always
those
tell people,
stories.
like, you have to remember that you are an author of your story. And I like to say co-author. And that leaves room for like the fact that not everything is of your doing, in a sense. Like you could put yourself in the right time and place, but like so many times, luck, um, if you believe in luck. I mean, I don't even believe in luck, but I don't want to get too philosophical. The point is like, so you can say you're an author. I say you're a co-author of your journey, and either you tell your story automatically, like based on what's happening to you and what circumstances are dictating, which means that the real author of this story is really going to be the environment and like the external influence, which writes your story for you, which happens to a lot of us. Like we just go through the motions, right? You go to
Mm.
school, you go to university, you get a job, whatever. It's same in the music business. Like you become a musician, you're like, okay, what do I do? Oh, I record an EP. Okay, and then what? And then you send it to a bunch of labels, and then what? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a story that like has been written by the outside world. That's not necessarily the story that you need to follow. And so yeah, I believe the more you feel like you're in control, and I don't mean that in like 100% control because you can't control everything, but I do believe that you will feel more peace and joy, and you're just going to calm down and be a little less restless if you feel like you're contributing to the narrative of what your story is.
Mm.
And when to the degree that you don't do that, you're going to start experiencing some restlessness because we're not born to just be on autopilot. Like the capacity of an average human being is just incredible should you tap into it. And yeah, I just think a lot of people sacrifice that capacity for comfort, and I mean, I always say like safe job. It's quote unquote safe. You see how many people are getting laid off now?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's actually safer to put things in your own hands and like to release your own content and tell your own story and create your own podcast. And maybe actually that is safer, as unsafe as it feels in the short run. Maybe that is actually like, the safe route today. So you just start challenging a bunch of stuff when you decide to write your own narrative, your own story. And one of them for me is like the realization that actually the jobs or the corporate careers that I considered safe are not safe at all. So
Mm.
many, like Amazon laid off 10%, like 10,000 people, I heard recently. You think like if anyone didn't need to lay anyone off, it'd be Amazon.
Yeah.
They're laying people. Microsoft is laying people up. Microsoft, it's like, what is going on, right? So you cannot avoid risk in life, And either like you will have to face it when you kind of have like less options because you left it and now someone's presenting you with an ultimatum, or you can start proactively eating lunch alone and sort of charting your course and saying, yeah, what is my mission in this world? Like, what is my calling? What can I author, And it doesn't mean also, I'm not a big proponent of impulsive changes, of revolutionary proclamations like, of course, I'm a musician. I quit.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow I will start my album. And like, a year from now, I'll be like Ed Sheeran. Yeah, that's crazy talk.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't going to happen. So I'm not a fan of that approach either. I mean, like, listen to your conscience, make a long-term plan, and realize that you write your story, that you can write your story. And if you don't, the world will do it for you. I mean, I sound like some kind of a motivational speaker, dude. I just realized. People must be like,
I feel motivated, man. So it's
well,
working.
this guy, yes. And please sign up for our free event, 25 grand to see me in person, but not talk to me. No, unless somebody's interested, we'll make one up like very quickly.
Let us know if that's interesting to you. It makes me think of that expression. It didn't happen to you; it happened for you, where you can kind of see.
That today.
Oh yeah, it's cool. It's like I don't know where I heard it, but it stuck, and it's just a way of thinking that when these things come up, to kind of reframe them as opportunities. Again, like you're the author, you're the writer of this story. So how are you going to turn this into your thing? And so many people have their stories, of success where they hit that rock bottom or they come to that like dark moment where the all is lost moment. And what am I going to do here now? And that is the very thing that catapults them forward.
I mean, I share this with the students in our academy when they say, I've been reaching out to people and no one's getting back to me. Even in our production company, like when one of our producers will say, dude, I honestly, I reached out to like 900 people and I don't have a single meeting. And I'm always like, that's amazing. And everyone just laughs because it's kind of a funny way to respond to something like this. Like, someone's sitting there like, I don't know. They're all despondent. And I'm just like, that's amazing. They're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, it has to be this way for me to read your book in 10 years. Like, what did you want? Like, so I emailed 900 people and I got 900 jobs. The end. I'm probably not going to read that book.
Right.
Most books I'm reading about real artists, real entrepreneurs, whatever, people who make things happen, shitload of pain and not much of anything in the beginning. In fact, like the reverse is true, like, just giant challenges, obstacles, whatever. So let's reframe it, let's reframe everything that happens. Like you said, it's not to us, but like, what are we going to do with this food? Can we digest it and like, become stronger as a result? Or are we going to like stress out, kill our digestion and all the nutrients in this densely packed so-called negative event that could have made us stronger had we reflected in our lunch hour, which we spend alone? We could have said, what's the universe trying to tell me with this occurrence that's happening here? Because it seems to be a pattern. And it could be as simple as your emails are too long. Like, write shorter emails. And guess what? Like 2 weeks later, oh yeah, people are getting back to me now. Well, there you go. Like, don't get emotional. It's just like, you're going to get like, it's almost like you have to have this inevitable mindset, which is like, I've made a decision that, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to like put myself in a certain place. And that's it. the ways could be many. The rejections will probably be many, and you'll have to pivot like 100 times. But you're comfortable and just relaxed on the inside because you're like, the decision has been made.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get there, but it might take a while, you know? Like
Right.
that. I'm not saying this from theory, by the way, Brian, just so people don't think I'm
Oh yeah,
like, what
no.
is this guy talking about? You know, it's like easy to
Mm.
say. I'm talking about like the way I had to like reframe my mind when I was stuck in a creative in a corporate job. I honestly had to make it inevitable in my mind that this is just like temporary and that I will be a creator. I will be a music producer. I will be all of these things. And literally, like, you can do cheesy things that, like affirmations, for instance, like writing in your journal saying, you know what? I'm feeling so excited because I'm spending most of my days doing what I believe is my, God given talent. I'm putting it to work. I'm expressing myself this way. Um, you almost have to program yourself. And I did that. And it really worked because every setback was kind of like, oh, this is just a thing on the way to the inevitable
Mm.
conclusion,
Right.
instead of like, oh, this is the world telling me that I don't belong. You have to deeply, deeply like make it a resolution and a decision that you're gonna do this thing, you're gonna commit to it. And it can't be like divorced from reality. This commitment, this decision has to coincide with reality, with a big R. Like there has to be signs that you are indeed on your way. So for you to be like, let's say, I don't know, 50 something years old, vice president of a corporation, and suddenly you decide like, oh, you're going to be a, I don't know, touring musician with, platinum albums. I'll support that vision if you show me some signs or patterns that indicate this is a possibility. But if there's nothing to show in reality with a big R and not just the reality in your head, that there's signs supporting this, then it's probably like, more of a marathon than you thought. Like maybe we need some intermediary decisions first. Like, first, I'll commit to learning guitar. Next, I'll commit to performing live. Next, you know what I mean? So, but in my case, there was all kinds of signs that like my soul since childhood was trying to express this, like, and doing it meaningfully, meaning like I did sign up for the talent show. I went out there and I performed. I tried to record demos in high school when studios cost $500 an hour. And I had no idea what to do when I got into a studio. Like, you look back on your life and you realize, holy shit, like, I've always been trying to like externalize this thing, And so as long as that is true and there are those signs, then anyone who's listening to this now that has capacity as a creator or a musician, you've expressed it in a way that has been acknowledged by someone who knows what they're talking about. Yeah, like your commitment and your decision should be a lot more like far reaching, like dare to attempt, dare to attempt. But even a 55-year-old who's never like done anything with music, who has that dream, do it. I just mean like be realistic. It's all about the situation, the context. If the 55-year-old looks at their, bank statement, they're like, I've saved my money. I got money. Like, I've been responsible. I can quit right now and be, yeah, it's all about the context. Like, only what is realistic under in your situation. But yeah, we got to write our story, man. There's nothing like listening to people like on their deathbed. I don't want to go grim here, but like, I think it was in another email that I wrote from the past 2 weeks or so. But it's like the daily perspective can really sedate you because you're just going through your everyday stuff. And there's always this vague voice inside of you who's like kind of asking, is this it? Like, is this it? And then you don't even know how to answer that question. So you just turn on HBO or Netflix or whatever, or go on YouTube for the next 3 hours. But the point is it's like, you know, a deeper side of you knows that like how crazy precious this life is and like what possibilities are in store for you if you just like learn to switch your perspective from the daily going through the motions to like, well, what if I got hit by a streetcar? Right? Like, what would go through my mind? And there's a good bet that whatever you think would go through your mind if you're laying under a streetcar today, because no one expects to go, like, you know, but there's a good chance that it, like, whatever you think would go through your mind at that moment is something you need to look at and implement in your life. So if you think, for instance, oh my gosh, my family, I spent so little time with them. I was chasing the Grammy. Well, you know, yeah, go home, hug your kids, like realize I know people who've won Oscars and Grammys. Like, it's great, but like the next day, you honestly don't feel any different. I talk to rich people. It's the same. Like, there's an elation and a kind of euphoria on the way to the payoff. And then you get the payoff, and then it's like, oh, I'm still Brian. It's still Monday. And my kids are still not talking to me. You know, so it's like, yeah, imagine you're under a streetcar, you didn't see it coming. What's going through your head? Write it down in your journal, and then like maybe incorporate some of those things one step at a time. Could start with a guitar lesson, could start with more time with your kids, whatever it may be, you know. But work backwards from the end. And dude, we're getting really deep. Yeah, I don't think I get this deep with anyone.
We're all the way under a streetcar
on any other music production podcast where we talk about mortality.
We're going to have to change it to music production therapy. It's such a good point, though, to think about, because you do get lulled into the patterns and the routines of life, and it's easy to see, you know, to take it back to the lunch thing, like, oh, it's just another day at lunch, whatever. But to really see the cumulative effects, the drops in the bucket that actually do fill up the bucket over time. I think we all kind of imagine like we're going to show up one day with a fire hose to fill up that bucket and then we'll be there. But it doesn't happen that way. It's just drops and drops. And you said in one of your other emails was you are what you do repeatedly. You become what you do repeatedly. And it's that kind of thinking that is really important, and not just music, but in your life. You know, what are you building in as far as those things that are important to you, and what the stuff that we neglect for the short-term obligations or things that feel urgent but maybe aren't that important.
Yeah, I think again, it's really about getting in touch with what your conscience is trying to tell you. And it's like we have 8 billion universes in this world. And this is like every human being is a universe of ideas, of preferences, of likes, dislikes. If you could just express that without fear, earnestly, without shame, like just imagine how interesting the world would be. You know, whereas like one negative aspect of technology is that it kind of accumulates data and best practices and algorithm preferences. So a lot of people basically kind of like adjust themselves to the best practices or what the algorithm wants. And then we no longer hear the true story because everyone starts their video with, hey guys, in this video, I'm going to teach you the 10 tips to mix faster, better, and whatever. Like, and you just go, wow, that's probably not what they sound like in reality. Um, so it's like I don't know, it's one thing I noticed, that technology is kind of, it has this, you run the risk of losing your unique self while you're trying to basically gain views and likes and all of that other stuff. Whereas I think what will be precious in the future, I even notice it in my own experience. Like, I tend to follow YouTube channels of people who don't have a high subscriber count, and they don't do anything that YouTube recommends. But the way they talk just puts me at ease, and they're saying smart things. So I don't mind actually walking around with them in my head. You know what I mean? As I wash dishes or whatever. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to do something like this, like, because I've been guilty of, like, oh, let's make the first 60 seconds really dynamic. That's not me. Maybe it's going to be dynamic. Maybe it won't. But like, I fully intend to, help whoever's listening, maybe with some information or inspiration or whatever. Like, that's the, first and foremost thing. So I wanted to share a story with you speaking of eating lunch alone, by the way. One of our students, this guy, James, from UK, he was active in the 90s as a dance music producer. And then he kind of got, into the real world, quote unquote, of working, supporting his family. And like, his studio and his synths started collecting dust as he basically attended to the practical needs of everyday life, And then he joined the Masterclass. And one of the things that we share is this idea of a love letter. And well, the funniest thing first that James showed me was a picture of him sitting in his car on his lunch hour, alone in his car, with his laptop like over the steering wheel, and like working on, whatever, the homework that we gave them or some music production stuff. So he implemented that, and then he wrote this thing, the love letter, to William Orbit, who everybody knows, right? Legendary music producer. And, James had a connection with him, and he just wrote him a love letter saying, hey, man, I'm dusting off the synths. I'm getting back into things just in case, you ever need some of my expertise. I'm around. And guess what? Like, William Orbit wrote him back, and he's like, yeah, I'm working on an album. I could use your help. Like, the simple practice of extracting yourself from whatever environment you're a part of right now to author your story, even if it's just one email to like a one connection from your musical past. Just that, it's just like, and now like James is working with William on a bunch of stuff. They're doing Dolby Atmos mixes, all this stuff. And it wouldn't have happened had James not extracted himself from his corporate like environment to slice out that half hour to, to author, I guess, your own story. And the other thing I want to say about this is that you should not be unhappy if you're working at a day job or like you have a corporate career. I recently had an email from one of the musicians also in our academy who is following these emails also. And they told me their story, and they're like, well, I'm 65 now, and I had to put music aside because I had to raise a family. So I just had to get a job for 20 years. But now I'm kind of rekindling the whole thing with music, blah, blah, blah. And he said that I'm inspiring to him. That I'm his hero or something like this. And I read this and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with this, with someone who's older than me, who's raised a family, who's attended to their duties. Like, So I wrote him back. I said, dude, actually, you're my hero because I think art is more than just music. I think art is life, or life is art, however you want to put this. And there's probably an email coming about this once I crystallize my thoughts. But the idea is this: look, some things are going to stop being art. Like, whatever medium you're talking about, whether it's photography or film or music, it's considered art, or statues or whatever. Like, there's times when it's considered art, and there will be times in the future where we don't even call it art. It's just a thing, it's just like something. But life to me is always going to be art, because at the deepest level, life is a creative thing, meaning that you have this block of marble, which is like Brian when he was all square, or Tommy when he was all square. And slowly, as you go through life, you're trying to chip away at all those things that aren't essentially you. And, the degree to which you succeed is the degree to which you basically chipped away at everything that was non-essential, that was like basically borrowed from the world or adopted from somebody you thought you should follow, but it wasn't really you. So the more you chip away at this stuff, the more I feel you will be at peace with yourself when you're older. But basically my response to this guy was, hey, you're my hero because if art, or if life is art, then you brought life onto this planet, meaning you had a family, you attended to its needs, so you cared for everyone, you fed everyone. The best way you knew how was to take this job and not to like risk everything by, going on tour with your band. And now your kids are grown, you are in retirement age, you've attended to the most important thing, which is human beings in your life. And now, guilt-free, you're coming back to the music. Now, without having to worry, is it going to pay the bills? Is it not going to pay the bills? So, for me, you're the great artist here, because I think you attended to all your contexts in a way that was smart, and you're not going to have any regrets. And so, that's another thing I want to say to people. Like, I'm a big fan of everyone, like musicians, following your calling. Yes, I think you should be courageous. I think you should try to follow what you believe your calling is, if it happens to be music. But I also think like you should not be unhappy if reality with a big R says, no, you know what? In your case, to make money, you're going to have to hold down a job. But guess what? That's because the kind of music that you're making is not something that should be governed by the marketplace, or that should answer to the needs of the marketplace. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I don't think people like Aphex Twin or Boards of Canada were looking at their spreadsheets going like, how many album sales are we going to get, guys? Let's really go into this niche of like really hazy synth sounds with these chord progressions that kind of are foggy. And it's like reality just verified certain things, It happened to be the right time and the right place for Aphex Twin or Boards of Canada to reach certain notoriety. But, had it not happened, I don't think they would have changed the way they went about things to meet the demands of the marketplace. And so that's what I'm saying. It's like, you got to widen your perspective and realize that, nobody ever said that you should be making money from music. And yes, that's what we teach musicians. Like one of the last ways that you can actually do that from your home studio. But not everyone is meant to do it, and that's okay. There's certainly a lot of pain and struggle that comes along with making music your full-time occupation. And any full-time musician will tell you that. Any full-time DJ will tell you that. How dreadful they feel having like half a year booked in gigs that they have to travel for, crossing time zones, sleeping in airports. Like, you it used to be a dream and a fascination, and now it's just like, oh man, how do I get out of this? You know, yeah, I don't even know where I'm going with this, but it all starts with your lunch alone. You got to figure that out, because I cannot tell you what the what the thing is for your life, right? So I'm busy trying to figure out mine, and you know, and sometimes through these conversations you realize certain things also. So it's also good to chat, because it's another way of externalizing things that are behind your eyes. And as you say things, sometimes you go, oh wow, you know, or as you hear someone else's perspective, you go, oh wow. It's good to get out of your own head, definitely.
Yeah. And that's a way of telling the story that serves you, that helps you get to wherever you want to go, by recontextualizing or seeing it as opportunity. Or, you know, the fact that you don't have to do it for money means it retains a certain purity, and you can follow those directions you want. And sometimes that might really be the thing you need to do for it to have any real meaning. And, you know, the examples you give of like Aphex Twin and Boards of Canada, that's like music that wasn't written for an audience that really existed. You know, it had to happen and come out naturally and be this thing that was real to the creators. And that's where it gets interesting. If you're trying to do it to please some outside source besides yourself, really, you have no control over that either.
No, there's no control. And like, even if you listen to people who are wildly successful and commercial in our world, like today I was listening to Mr. Beast talk about YouTube strategy. And I kind of admire that guy, because he really keeps it real. Like when it comes to advice, it just so happens that his specific calling, like if he sat down and wrote in his journal on his lunch break, I think he's doing exactly what he's meant to be doing. But his advice was, talk about the things that fascinate you. Whatever you cannot help talking about, that's it. Because like, you can't win any other way.
Right.
Right? Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
someone else will want it more. Someone else will believe it more.
Exactly. Like, even if you win, you will not maintain the first place position, because someone else who actually enjoys doing it will do it, and it won't be about exactly. So, and if you lose by world standards, you still win, because all your life you've done what led your curiosity, your fascination. And if that didn't make money, well, you still did it because it was important to feed your soul. And you just said, well, it seems like I'm not going to make money at this thing. I better get a part-time job somewhere.
Yeah.
Or rent myself out as a copywriter or editor or music composer, or whatever your skill is. And I guess, you know, this is the philosophy that we sell to musicians. Sell, quote unquote, which is like, you want to lend your skill and get paid for it, you're going to have to possibly write a song for a toilet paper commercial.
Yeah.
The plus is you get to sit in a studio. You don't have to leave the studio to go to some unrelated job. The minus, of course, is you may not want to put your name on it. It may not necessarily be the music you enjoy doing. And it's up to you to make the calculation of what you prefer. And, you know, I netted out in my life in, I would still, all things considered, be rather in a creative environment in a studio. And if like most of the day is spent doing things that I don't necessarily find inspiring, but I'm still in the studio learning the craft, and I can apply these learnings to whatever I do actually want to create. Because like, making music for ads taught me Ableton Live. It wasn't me. If I had to learn Ableton Live, I'd probably never learn it. But the reason why I learned it was because someone told me you have 2 days to deliver a piece of music. And I was like, oh, how do you even drag the movie file into Ableton. Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Gave you
okay,
problems to
how do
solve.
I
Yeah.
do a tempo change? Okay. Right? So I just made a choice. I'm like, actually, all things considered, this is the best possible scenario. Like, I get paid to be in the studio, I'm learning my craft, and then you know what? At the end of the day, when I'm tired of doing cat food and toilet paper or whatever, um, I'm just gonna maybe work on my own music. And now I know how to work Ableton, like
Mm-hmm.
because of the discipline that you need to, you know. It's funny, like how we always serve other people with this diligence, like we're willing to get up earlier and stay at work later for someone,
Yeah.
but we're not
Right.
always willing to do it for ourselves. So that's what I liked about my experience in this field is like it just taught me what it means to be a creative craftsperson, you know, a professional, like someone who has to deliver creativity for cash. And that's made me a lot more mature as a creative person because it's no longer about whims and wishes. It's about like, you know, what are you going to do?
Mm.
When are you going to do it by? Like,
Yeah.
we bleed and sweat for a corporate brand like Nike and Adidas, but like, how come you wouldn't make this kind of magic for yourself on 48 hours notice? Serious questions that you start
Yeah.
asking yourself after you've kind of, you know, gone through the ringer and a bunch of battles and like basically worked exhausting schedules to deliver music for advertising campaigns where you got paid a lot, weren't necessarily fulfilled at the end of it. But like, that's a serious question. You go, man, how come I can never work this hard, or this, how come I cannot be this prolific, you know, for my own, in my own creative output? So I'm always trying to find ways to like um be a better boss to myself, demand more from myself, you know, like and like this year I said, okay, I'm just gonna share every day a lesson. It's gonna be uncomfortable because now I, you know, I gotta write every day. Oh man, like 30
Mm-hmm.
days in a row. Like, can I be brilliant 30 days in a row? Probably not. So I'm gonna have to be okay with like some emails being way too long because I didn't have enough time to make them crisper. And I'm gonna have to be okay with some people on my email list going like, what the hell is this guy going on about? Like, I signed up to learn how to make money with making music for commercials because that's what most of my email list is. But because I want to author my story differently and I don't want this chapter of me making music for brands to be like 300 pages, but instead maybe a long chapter, but not the last chapter in this book. I do believe that the principles or the lessons that I've learned in my creative journey can be applied to not just musicians, you know, but like to anyone who's trying to express themselves in this world and trying to figure out how they can be autonomous and making money. Um, and these are things I've had to figure out, you know, since sailing away from the safe harbor of the day job. And
Mm.
so this is, you know, what I've basically committed to myself, to the my inner boss. Like, okay, boss, I'll write 30 emails. And I started drafting one today, and then I saw that we have an interview, and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go talk to Brian, which was great because I was like overthinking this email I was writing today, and it's getting longer again. So I'm gonna have to really like. I'm sure
Mm.
after our conversation, I'm gonna go back, look at it, and go, what the hell was I thinking? And just like, you know. But anyway, committing yourself, really good. Just the shipping stuff. Just think about that. Like, why is it that you're able to ship stuff for other people on time,
Mm.
on budget, but like when it comes to your own life, you can barely ship anything? And the answer, in my case, it's like all kinds of like reasonably sound excuses that are masking fear.
Yeah.
Fear of failure, fear of what are they going to think of me if I send these emails, all kinds of stuff, you know. But I think the fruit and the result of me writing for 30 days according to my best thinking, when I eat a lunch alone and jot these thoughts down in my journal, is it's going to be immensely more valuable than anyone getting upset or unsubscribing. In fact, I have about 30 or 40 people unsubscribing with each email I send. Mm. And it doesn't bother me in the least. And the reason why it doesn't bother me in the least is because, first of all, like, if you don't want to receive these kinds of emails, we should live in a world where you can unsubscribe, right? Like,
right.
And second of all, I only want people on my email list who are going to be happy to open these kinds of emails. And then I don't have to think about like, oh, what will they think? Because generally my email list will be composed of people who enjoy these kind of stories. And that's who I want to surround myself by. And it creates this feedback mechanism whereby the people that I'm talking to resonate with these ideas and they send me encouragement and maybe other perspectives and so on and so forth. And so that's a win in my mind, you know. That's good, you know. And I am also reminded about this quote. Maybe I shared it on the podcast before with you, but it comes up in this context. Some engineer, some famous engineer saying like, at the end of his career, like near the end of his life, he said, you know, I never realized I was broke. You know why? Because I was in the studio from 8 in the morning till like midnight every day, just having fun. So my whole life just passed by and I loved it. And like, it was an adventure. And like, I just realized I was broke later on, and he wasn't even like sad about it. You know what I mean? It was just that idea of like, he was too busy, you know, following his calling to like think about money. So, you know, I think money is something you got to consider, obviously. I mean, like,
you gotta eat.
In my situation, I get very nervous if I feel like I can't pay the bills or my family, like I'm being irresponsible, you know, because I'm a provider for the family. So I need to sort out the money situation. It's another reason why I kind of enjoy like working in the field of making music for ads, is because it's very concrete. It's like, again, I may not always be passionate about it or like might not always be fascinating to create music for, you know, some kind of a commercial, but it's very concrete. It's like, I know exactly, you know, what we're doing. I know who we're doing it for. The budgets are clear. Like all of that is clear. So in a way, it leaves out a lot of ambiguity. It's very clear. We're not trying to make art over here. It's commercial, creative work. And so, you know, it's another reason why I think it's something that's worth considering for a lot of musicians.
You put it in the context of a good story, though, in that you're honing your craft. You're learning how to use live. You're figuring out how these things work. You're learning also how to show up and how to get things done and how to be disciplined, which is applicable to every aspect of your life.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It's, you know, even if you might musically not be thrilled that you're making, say, some like exciting car commercial music, you're still pulling value from it because it's fulfilling another goal. I think your emails and your attitude about the emails is great, because even if you are losing those subscribers, you know, they're not your true people then anyway. And,
exactly.
You're refining your image and your message through each email. And, you know, I'm getting to know you more and more, even just reading your emails. And I'm getting to know myself reading your emails, because I'm either resonating or not with certain things. Usually I am. So, and you know, one that you sent out, you had AI write it, Chat GPT, which is fascinating to me and a little terrifying, but I think mostly fascinating. But you actually asked Chat GPT like a great back in your face, put the mirror on the machine question of how can I how can I not let AI take over my position as a
Yeah.
musician? And one of the things it said was your story. Focus on your story, and that's exactly what you're doing. Your
Yeah.
story is really interesting and alluring to people because you have been in different positions in your life, and you've been in a comfortable enough position with
Mhm.
your corporate job that you could have stayed there, but you did take that risk, and you calculated it too. It wasn't just that's it, I'm
Mhm.
out of here and I'm gonna buy a guitar tomorrow. Like you had those lunches again, as you said. So that's the computer that will never have that story. It'll never be able to
No.
give
And
people
it's a
that
good thing
thing
it
to
knows it
connect
too.
with.
It's funny,
It's
Brian,
funny
like
that it knows it.
I wrote a few questions to AI, but then I
Yeah.
had to like publish the email. The reason why I wrote to AI yesterday is because I literally like ran out of time. I promised my family that we'd have a Mexican themed evening. So we started playing some rare Mexican records and just like eating nachos and just Mexican food, and we just screwing around,
Mm.
and then of course, like after a few beers, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's like 10 p.m. I'm like, what am I gonna do? I don't feel like writing an email.
Oh, I love it.
But I committed to it, right?
Yeah.
This is the whole thing. It's
You have
like
to do it.
you have
Yeah.
to do it. So I went, okay, let me get AI to like write the email for me. And I literally asked, like, how can I not be made obsolete by you? Thanks. Something like that. And I already had a sense that it would write back some reasonably sound answers because I've played around with it before.
Because it's really smart.
It is really smart. And in fact, like, it is missing the sauce, the style, the swagger. It's missing all of that stuff, basically. It doesn't have its own tone of voice.
You can give it a tone though. You
You
can,
can.
which
I've
is
tried,
crazy.
like, but it's
Tell it.
still kind of like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
It's
It's like
fabricated. Yeah.
it's not like it's not delightful. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it will definitely do like it's probably gonna get way better at that. It's probably gonna be scary good in the future at imitating styles and tones of voice and all that. But like but it the answer was good enough to send out as an email. And it is true that your story is um should you choose to embrace the fact that you're an author of your life, then your story will truly be something that cannot be replaced by an algorithm. And now the interesting thing that I see happening is like, in order to become successful as a digital writer or a YouTuber or a podcaster, we're actually being told to act more and more like algorithms, right? Like, well, you got to do this formula, like X amount of episodes in this amount of time, X amount of cuts in this amount of time on YouTube. You got to be very, very brief in like your essays or your emails, because people don't read. And I'm just like, yeah, but if I become so mechanical where I can basically chalk up my style to a equation,
Mm-hmm.
then like I'm the first person to be
Yeah, we
replaced
don't
by an
need you anymore,
algorithm.
Tommy. Yeah.
So
Well,
maybe it is the 20,000 word email that is absolutely ridiculous notion according to best practices. But like, I know that I got 1,000 true fans who will be like, I can't wait till the next 30,000 word email, and everyone else unsubscribes.
mm-hmm.
But then I know that the 1,000 people who are still there are like still human, because no algorithm would permit a 30,000 word email.
Right.
Um,
Well, the algorithm is really, its mission is to get people to watch, to listen more, right? So you really, in a way, you can go that route and do the things that have worked for the algorithm for people. I don't know where I heard this, but somebody said if we all do that, then eventually all there's going to be is pornography. Because
yeah,
that's going to
exactly.
be the thing that grabs people attention, and,
Yeah,
and
because
I
you're
don't necessarily mean sexual pornography, but I do also mean
no,
it,
but
but like
lowest common
violence,
denominator.
but shocking things,
Lowest
and
common
anger,
denominator.
right?
Lowest common denominator.
But
Like,
if we're doing if we're being true and giving people something original and of value, and we're catering to the people more, and the people enjoy that, they relate to it, the algorithm will start to reward that. And in like YouTube, TikToks, things like this, these fast consumption mediums, it is rewarded to do those things. Hey guys, 10 things that I can tell you here, but you're never going to believe number 9. Wait till we get to
And
that
stick
at the
around
end.
to the end.
And I got a surprise for you.
That's
all
right.
These like little tactics to keep people are effective, but I also think we're going to get sick of it. And
we're already going to,
look at like television, for instance. All the conversations on late shows got shorter and shorter and shorter, on news programs shorter and shorter and shorter. So it's just these little bits and tidbits from the guests, and they don't really get to say what they want. And what emerged from that? Hour-long podcasts, 2-hour, 3-hour conversations.
3 hours.
Like what we're doing right now that people were like longing for. So
they are longing, because they're human. It's a reflection of like how humans actually act.
Right. I think that's going to start to carry over in things, because I think
so too. But I think it'll be a minority.
Yeah, it might be. But I think it'll be enough where you'll find the real people. And just like you are with your email, you're going to find the real people that really get you and that you really get. And those connections will be more valuable. And even if you want to take it to like making money and all of that, there's that theory, Kevin Kelly of 1,000 true fans.
Yep.
1,000 people that will spend like $100 on you a year is a 6-figure income. So if you want to look at it that way too, but I think we do sort of want to narrow down our audiences and weed out the junk.
I do. I think like even if you look at big name artists, like why are they so unhappy so much of the time? Why is Justin Bieber avoiding people? Why? Like,
it's because he's being chased all the time, I bet. It's probably
like,
miserable in a lot of ways.
I think it's a resentment thing. It's like, first you're on the chase to have millions adore you, and then you resent the fact that millions adore you.
Yeah.
We're
not
there's
meant
something
for that.
unnatural about it.
Yeah.
It's a product of this mass media machine that basically manufactures stardom and everything. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against technology or even mass media. And I think this principle, mathematical principle of like the great is always in the minority. It's almost by definition. Like you said, it's like if we just allow the mass to decide what's going to happen, the sad truth is that the mass usually does what is easiest, what is least resistance, what is most sensational, what is most ear-catching, what is loudest. And it's been that way, I think, since the beginning of time. I don't know. Like, and so, yeah, there's going to be less people kind of like gathering around the quiet person with maybe profound insights. There's going to be, for every 100 bands, only 2 that are actually profoundly interesting, and introducing something. And you're really going to have to tune in to understand what they're doing. Whereas most people will just be caught by the loudness of or sensationalism or the hooks of those who know how to market really well. So I guess as I think about my legacy, and I've had to do this a lot, like since we started the Masterclass, for instance, you get into this online world. I am now selling a premium product online, which is quite expensive. Like, it's not some Udemy course, you have to put down a significant amount of money to join our academy. And now I'm not just a music producer. Now I'm not just a teacher. I'm an online business owner. So like part of me is like at every stage of the journey watching the YouTube videos of like folks who are selling premium programs. How do they do it? Oh, they have a webinar. Oh, they have a sales call, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, the more you watch those guys, the more you're like, oh my goodness, I should be at 100,000 a month selling a premium course. Like teaching people how to make money on top of that. I'm not teaching people how to mix. I'm teaching people how to make a career out of like your home studio. Um, and then you become unhappy because you're like, how come I'm not selling 100 grand a month? And then you're like, we should really get more people into our funnel. We should close them better on a sales call. And then you get like months where you're doing really well, but then there's something that's like when you're eating lunch alone, it's kind of tugging at your soul and you're going, what are you doing? What is your main objective?
Next
Like,
thing you know, you're
is your
eating lunch
main
alone and
objective
get out of
now?
it.
Is your main objective now to do 100 grand a month? Is that it? Is that the main objective? Because it can be had. It can be had. Or is your objective to actually make a decent income from the academy, but to be a major game changer for musicians with talent out there who just don't have a way to express it and they have no idea about our business? Because those two things are different and they're not mutually exclusive. You can achieve both. But I'm just giving you an example of how you can lose the plot very quickly.
Yeah.
Because you start listening to all these dudes who are like doing 100K a month in online course sales. And when I talk to some of them, we don't even talk about like, you know, we talk about the
impact of the
effectiveness of
content.
funnels instead of like, what are human beings getting out of it? And then you read on Reddit, like some premium courses for musicians, and people are like, it's really nothing I couldn't have gotten out of watching a bunch of YouTube videos. But the guy who sold me on the phone was really effective, you know? And so I think about this a lot because I don't really want to have, that's not my legacy, man. Like, I want the academy to do well. I do. I want us to make a healthy income. But more than anything, what I want is for musicians on Reddit to say, like, you know what? That was like just on a different level than everything else I took as a course.
Tommy really taught me. He's
Yes,
really inspiring,
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. And then,
even if it's, yeah, some of this information is in books and it's out there, but Tommy's not. His message isn't.
right. So it's like they are different hats that you're wearing, and you can quickly lose your soul by saying, well, you know, I got to sell 1 million albums or else, yeah, we're not going to be like whatever, whoever your hero is. But that's kind of losing your soul. And you know, when I look at like success, I look at my favorite brands in the music space. So like take Daft Punk as an example. It's proof that you don't have to lose your soul and still sell a crap load of albums. Of course, we're living in a different time now. I don't like, we're not talking about selling albums anymore, but it's just the idea that I don't think Daft Punk ever did anything that compromised their vision, their creative
Yeah.
vision.
They did what they wanted to do.
They did what they wanted to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were very crafty marketers and they did everything in a savvy way, meaning they didn't expect not to sell. They expected probably to be a success, but still, it was just the right combination of everything. And so that's what I always say to our guys and our team. Like, we're trying to be like Daft Punk, no compromises on integrity and our image and authority and reputation as like people who are really in it for the art and the music. I don't want any compromises on that, you know, and I think as long as we stay true to that, you know, we're okay. And I also don't want to devalue ourselves either. Like, if some people say to me, your course is way too expensive, I'm like, I guess it's not for you. Like, I can't make you see that if you have the talent, the tenacity, and you follow the steps as I'm outlining them to you, as somebody who actually took this journey, who's on the inside of the industry, and I know exactly who you're going to be emailing because it's probably one of my friends. If you don't believe that taking these steps with your talent is going to result in like you actually receiving projects in the business, then that's one thing. Then yeah, you probably should not invest money if you don't believe. But if you do believe in it, how could you ever say that? Like, I'm willing to pay thousands of dollars, honestly, Brian, to anyone who I believe can take me to a result quicker than like me having to put my own curriculum together or stumble my way through mistakes before I figure out, what. So, and then, yeah, but it's about soul. It's about being sensitive to human beings. So we have people with incredible talent, for instance, who want to join our academy, but they're in Bolivia or they're in Ukraine, and they're like, I really want to join, but like I cannot make this work. And then like if I think like one of those online guys who are successful, the best practice is, well, I'm sorry, it would be unfair to other students if I made accommodations for you, but not for anyone else. So if you're really serious about it, you will go in debt with your family. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really sound like the right answer. Because really the purpose is I really want these poor musicians out there who don't really see an option as an outlet for their talent. I want to be the one to give them the option. So by that success criteria, like almost everyone should have access to this masterclass, right? The only problem, of course, that we have is that we are hand-holding people through it. So we have, we're reviewing homework, we're giving you feedback on your emails on your website. So we have to be kind of responsible, whatever. But like, according to that criteria, when I look myself in the mirror, I go, okay, I have to find a way to make Ivan from Ukraine like a way for him to get into here. So we make all kinds of plans with people, like scholarships and custom payment plans that we make up, without necessarily changing the price, but
That's
like,
really cool.
Or we have, and I don't even want people to know about it, but I started the sentence, so I have to finish it. There's been cases where like, people literally could not afford it, and there was no payment plan that could make it affordable to them, or else they would be paying for like 10 years. So I've asked them, like, what could you do as a way of like giving us value in return? So maybe we let you in and you learn some of the things, and then we put you to work for us doing some things according to your talent, ability, and level, whatever. But again, it's like the idea of what is your primary aim and what is the story you're authoring, and then making a decision based on that and not on like business practices or success best hacks of online education that will take you to 100K a month and risk dehumanizing yourself because of it. And by the way, I'm not saying that people who charge 5-10 grand are robots and they're evil and they're not. Like, it really depends on the program. I'm sure there are programs out there that are worth every penny, no matter how expensive they are. But we run the risk, I think, and I'm just saying this from my personal journey, of really getting caught up in like what the algorithm wants, what the best practices want, and then suddenly you find that you're really isolated from human beings, and you're just looking at your spreadsheets and your sales and your email signups. Yeah. And I think that's an easy way to lose the plot. And then don't be surprised if people on Reddit are saying, it was expensive, but I don't know if like I really felt the difference, So
Well, having that clear mission before you, maybe even on a poster or sticky note, even on your computer, just something where you can see it and not lose it. Because I think you're right. And if we do start playing to the AI specifically or the algorithms specifically, we're thinking more about what it's going to do for the numbers and forgetting the people, then I think we're at risk of this stuff replacing us. Because if it knows what we need to be doing, and it might figure out a way to do it instead of us doing it. And if we haven't had some other measure, something a little more human or relating to our story, then it doesn't need us.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't need us. And the heart is really a uniquely human attribute.
Yeah,
And
I think we have to double down on all that kind of
if we
stuff.
don't, if we lose that, man, I think we basically lose it all. Basically, like, and again, you know, it's been said, you can gain the whole world but lose your soul. I think there's a significant truth in that we all need to examine as it relates to our lives. So, the notion, like, why would you ever think that a million records would make you happy? Like, really dig into that notion. Like, what is the direct correlation between a million sales and your inner happiness? There was never a link. Like, they don't correlate. You might be temporarily elated, but whoever said there is a direct link between amount of things sold versus how you feel about how your life is progressing and what contribution you're making to the world? You know, we got to seriously think on that. And it's really up to each of us to do it. And again, I want to marry the two. I don't want these extremes of like, yeah, everything should be free. And why is he charging for anything? I believe you should charge. And in fact, I want every person that goes through our academy to exit and go, I respect myself as a craftsperson, and I'm going out into the marketplace. These brands are spending millions. They have millions. I am working every day to have magic come out of the speakers like no one else. So I'm going to walk around with my head high and I'm going to charge a handsome fee. And that's what I want to teach every musician. You know, it's like, work hard on your craft, make yourself indispensable, do something that no one else is doing at a time when, like, it's hard to do that. Harder than ever, actually. Because the moment you like open Native Instruments Complete and you load up any preset, guess what? You don't need to do anything to it. You don't need to learn compression. You don't need to learn EQ, because you didn't just spend 3 hours recording guitars in the garage trying to figure out how to make them clear and present. Every freaking preset is clear and present. And the moment you hear it, you're like, oh, that already sounds good. And you're satisfied. Well, maybe that's the goddamn problem. That, like, everything sounds like a quantized, fully polished sound. Maybe it's time to like experiment with making things sound, I don't know, whatever. You know what I mean?
I know
But I just mean today it's harder to like to motivate yourself to be different, because we just get lulled into like everything already sounds good enough. But the problem is everything sounds good enough, right? So what is the next thing? And again, it's like what AI taught me about not being made extinct by AI. It's your story. Like, what makes you unique? What do you bring into the music, you know? So when I think about like creating an album today, I almost feel like I had this idea that I would just make this album where it almost sounds like a live recording. Like, imagine you're like, well, I'm just going to make a song for you that's trying to express the idea of this, and like literally have your voice alongside the track as people listen to it on Spotify. So it's not just another track in a series of tracks from some playlist that all blends together into this, indistinguishable stream of music, but you literally like make yourself evident in this record however you can best. I can't sing, so maybe I would talk. I would say something. Maybe I make music out of words, right? It's been done before, but you know what I mean? It's like you really got to think about, yeah, what your story is and how you're going to express it, and what's the best way to put it out there. Also, like, everything is art, man. It's like you don't have to upload your file to a distribution service that will make your file available everywhere, because everyone can do that. What if your album is buried underground in a field somewhere in Scotland, and it's the only freaking copy ever made, and that is the story? You know that someone crazy enough is going to go there and dig it up because he's one of your 1,000 people. And the story is interesting, and it's unlike something you've ever heard before. And even the algorithm picked it up. Someone created an album and buried it, and it's the only copy. Like, I don't know. I'm just making
Maybe
things up,
the next album will have to be distributed through treasure maps. And
treasure maps,
send out
whatever.
some treasure maps, and whoever gets it, gets it.
Dude, there is a nostalgia that I have about owning things, and like how, the new world is about not owning stuff. We're basically paying a subscription fee to have access to an infinite library of music. But like, yeah, but how valuable is that to me? Like, I'm not actually holding anything in my hand, like, where's the thing that I treasure that I can pick up at any time, and I know it's mine and it belongs to me. So there's a nostalgia I have about it, and it's fascinating. I heard this guy on a podcast talk about how we are the last. I'm born in 76. We are the last generation. Anyone who is over 35, dude, think about this, man. It's going to make you feel really special. We are the last generation of analogs. We are the last Homo sapiens who understood the world as it was before it was digital. There's not going to be another generation after us who will understand what analog even is.
Right. Yeah, it's wild.
Dude, when I heard this, I was like, whoa, we are a rare species. We went head first in the front line of this digital revolution. And some of us are not going to come out. And you can tell who they are when you see their face lit up most of the day by their screen.
Right.
Missing out on freaking everything because the algorithm is busy at work grabbing your senses without necessarily feeding your soul.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's a wild thing to talk to young people about. I teach high school kids, and sometimes I'm telling a story and I have to remind them, like, in order to get in touch with this person, we had to make a telephone ring on a wall in a specific place, and they had to be near it. And if I wanted to call that girl and ask her for a date, I had to call that house that anyone in the house could pick up that phone. Her father, her mother, maybe her if I'm lucky.
And how do they react?
And they're like, what? How did anything? And they're like, how were there ever babies made? Like they can't even understand how people even got that far into a relationship.
Well, that was an art in itself, right? Like trying to carve out some time to like have some privacy.
I mean, I feel nervous just thinking about having to do that. When I was a kid, how many guts you had to summon up to start pressing those buttons.
But this guy, like, and I don't know, you're in bed. This is fascinating, Brian, because I don't talk to these folks. to me, they're like aliens. I mean, the closest I get is like my kid who's 10, and he's already exhibiting some characteristics of a teenager, but like he's still not in high school. So, he's still kind of innocent. But this
Yeah.
guy who was saying how we're the last generation of analogs, his name is Chris Lochhead, I believe,
Okay.
Lochead, just because I want to give attribution. He was saying how when he's having a meeting with um, people who are like in their 20s, and he asked them, "What did we just do?" They say, "Oh, we just met in person." They literally say in person if when the meeting's on Zoom. And
Right.
he's like, "No,
Oh,
we this was a Zoom
yeah.
call." And they
That's so
and he said
funny.
also that there's this phenomenon, I don't know if you can confirm this, but like when younger folks make plans, they put IRL,
Yeah. In
which
real
I've never
life.
heard of in real life. So basically his insight was that analogs understand what it's like living in the analog world, whereas the digital folks, to them, digital is native.
Yeah.
That is the default world.
I had a revelation once with my classes, like a year or two ago, where I said like something like, "I'll go online and check it out," and they're like, "What?" Like going? They don't say go online. Like you don't go online. It is on. This is
Everything
online.
is online.
you
Wow,
know,
that's
it's
interesting. Yeah.
always online. It's everything. So this concept like we remember going to the computer and plugging the wire into the phone and
Yeah.
modem noise.
They don't
It's
have it.
just a totally different reality, and
Yeah.
we'd be exactly the same if we were born today. We know nothing different.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the
And I'm trying
problem
to
a lot
be,
of adults I think run into is they forget that
yeah.
they think like this generation everything, but you would be the same way. I'd be the
Yeah.
same way.
Yeah. I'm trying
It's
to be mindful of that in the way that I talk to my son now, and another lesson I want to leave your audience with, which I think a lot of musicians need to learn, is like a lot of you folks don't know how to communicate, and your inability to write an email or communicate with someone is due to you're self-centered. Like you think about yourself and you want to tell your story. And paradoxically, we talked about having to tell your own story, but there's the right context for it. Like, and so the best kind of communication is when you consider the context of who you're talking to and adjust your communication to suit the needs of that context. In other words, it doesn't matter like what you want to get across. You got to realize that the person you're talking to may not be open to your message in the way that you want to deliver it. Like, so, so I'm trying to tie like what we're talking about also to a valuable lesson for musicians, which is that a lot of you write these long emails and stories and like how you're passionate about music and you've always dreamed of doing it. Like, you got to realize that the people on the inside, we don't, yeah, okay, that's nice, but like,
you and everyone
I,
else. Yeah.
yeah, you and everybody else, we're all trying.
Yeah.
So like that email is kind of wasted. You just wasted your opportunity to actually show the work concretely. But anyway, I brought that in as a way of like saying when I talk to my son, my wife and I are now trying to figure out how do we actually reach him? What is the best way to explain to him, the value of sunset?
Send him a DM.
Sun, yeah. He doesn't have a smartphone,
Yeah.
I told him, I'm like, do you realize that Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, actually didn't let his kids onto the iPad? It's
A
like
lot of
he
people in
knew.
tech do that with their
They know.
kids.
They
They don't.
know. They
Yeah.
know exactly. I mean, they just spent their whole day and they are getting paid six figures multiple to figure out how to make these devices and apps irresistible. So like when they go home, they know what they're brewing,
Hmm.
and they're smart for trying to protect their kids. So and this is the other thing, right, Brian? Like if we are constantly on the screen, if you observe yourself, I'm going from video to video. Like, luckily, I only have a small window of time in my day where I allow myself. But when I'm on there, like YouTube, let's say, my thumb is going and like I'm going from video to video, and like my curiosity engine is in overdrive, my fascination engine is in overdrive, this short-term sugary craving engine is in overdrive.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like the way that makes me feel. And on top of that, it cannot possibly put me in a frame of mind to create something that will be unique. It can only inspire me to like go, okay, in my next YouTube video, I'm going to make the thumbnail more high res and more screechy in terms of colors, and the font will be bigger, and my shock on my face will be the biggest it's ever been. And am I checking all the check boxes? You know, it's like you can go crazy. And the sad part is the algorithm's going to replace you, because it's going to go, oh, look how perfectly like algorithmable this is. Short intro, fast moving cuts, 7 points, you know, and always leave something till the end so that the watch time is increased. Yeah. So actually, maybe the pattern interrupt, and like the big fad or the big trend that's coming up next is like the opposite of what's happening now, which is like I'm actually thinking of starting my videos this way on my YouTube channel by saying, hey, it's Tommy Z, and I heard from the YouTube algorithm that the first 60 seconds is really important. It's got to be really dynamic, fast cuts, all of that. So in the spirit of that, let's take 1 minute to close our eyes, take a deep breath. Just going to do a guided meditation here, right? And just like piss off the people who are like, hey, where's the cuts? And endear or maybe charm or like connect with people who are like, oh, that was cool. Like, we're not going to spend the first 60 seconds showing how the coffee is being brewed and how I am walking down a street with some inspirational music and I'm talking to a stage of people and I'm a thought leader. And goodness, man. Like, I don't know, dude. It's just the biographies of people that I admire, the great composers, the great authors. I think they would have never conformed themselves to that, no matter how successful it was. They would have been like, what? You want me to contort my face because it has a higher likelihood of the algorithm picking it up? I have too much dignity for that. Like I'm trying to do important things here and not just, you know. So I don't know. I guess it will always be a balance, dude, because the people who have something good to say, we have to maybe even be sneaky about the way we get attention. Because like, what if we're totally drowned out by the noise? Like, what if we just don't appear in anyone's feed because like we're not very dynamic in our first minute? So maybe it's about like, you know, doing some things to get the attention, but not to the extent where you get totally lost in that and you become that and then you lose the plot and the perspective. But to the extent that, you know, you're able to fish some souls. And then when they actually join your email list, they get a 20,000 word email, which digs deeper. And then they go, oh shit, oh, okay. And then some of them go, this is ridiculous. Like, I signed up because the guy was funny on TikTok in 10 seconds.
Right.
And then others are like, yeah, this is the same guy who was like funny on TikTok, but like, wow, reading this email, like, you know, I feel more human. Like I feel at peace, or like, I guess that's the effect I'm trying to have, which is like, did anyone who interact with me when like, do you feel cheap? Do you feel a sugar high at the end of this interaction? Or are you walking away from it going, huh, that's interesting. You know, it made me think a little. And if it makes people a little more human at a time when, you know, being sucked in by these algorithms is like a real prospect, then I think I will be happy with my legacy, you know? And dude, and it works, man. This conversation, what are we at? 2 hours or something? Is it best practices? You wouldn't think so, but it works. Like, I literally have people emailing me after every podcast we have. In fact, some of our first sales to the masterclass came because of the first conversation we ever did. And it's a different kind of person. Do you know how vastly different a person is who comes from the Brian Funk or the music production podcast than from a TikTok ad? The TikTok ad person is sending me mad DMs like, passionate about music, want to make money. Can you help me, sir? Whereas the person who came from music production podcast is like, hey, listen to your 3-hour conversation with Brian, man. Some really cool stuff in there. Really dig your vibe. Would really love to check out what you got going on. I mean, it's like, right? It's like life is just more enjoyable that way, to be surrounded by folks like this and not some crazy dude saying, can you help me, sir? After he was one of the millions who was reached by my paid advertising.
I guess it's a matter of if you're going to be a package of Skittles and Sour Patch Kids, or are you going to be like a healthy salad? And if you're going to be the Skittles, you're going to get people on a sugar high coming at you, and otherwise you're going to get the health-minded, long-term thinking.
Right now, what I want to be. I want to be 78% dark chocolate Lindt. That's my brand. So it's not too sour, not too bitter. It's still feeling like chocolate, so it's sweet, but it's also good for you. I'm personally, that's my favorite chocolate, 78% Lindt. Because I love chocolate. Like, I can't eat milk chocolate all day, you know? But I think we need to do both, dude. You got to entertain, crack a few jokes.
And I guess it's a personal balance for people, you know?
Full spectrum. When you mix a track, what do you want to do? Remove all the highs? What do you want? Like all the bass? What do you want to do? Remove all the mids and be just like shallow, sugary pop? The mids is where the magic happens, bros and sisters, right? So like full spectrum, man. Like, you know, the full spectrum of life and humanity, which is, let's have a bit of laughs. Let's not run away from the, you know, uncomfortable facts. Let's face some things. Let's move forward thoughtfully, mindfully, like feeling the journey, you know? Yeah, man, all of it. I want it all, dude. That's why, like, the one thing that I find missing a lot from a lot of, like, you know, these how to be successful is the consideration of, like, that goes beyond time and space. Like, why do they ever question, is there life after death? You know, why don't we talk about those things, for instance? Those are interesting things. I want to know. Nobody knows for sure. So if nobody knows for sure, it's like there's a chance that there is. Nobody's proven that there is, and nobody's proven that there isn't, you know? So the only reason why I'm saying this, because I don't want to get into like some huge discussion about life after death. But like, I'm just encouraging whoever's listening or watching this to enlarge your perspective as much as possible. And when you're having lunch alone, extract yourself from the pull of short-term perspective and daily requirements and like go really large. Go like, what happens if I was dying today? What would go through my mind? Well, I should really like, because it might be tomorrow, or like next week or 25 years from now, but like I should start living according to what I think the most important things would be. And go even further than that. You know, if you entertain the possibility of, even if you don't, of life after death, how would your choices impact Or how would your choices be impacted by that perspective? That maybe there is an eternity. And if you don't believe in eternity, how would you feel if someone digs up your record 700 years from now? Like, I just cringe when I was in my 20s because I was trying to make music to be popular, to be cool, to be on the charts. So now when I think about it, if anyone unearthed this 700 years from now, I'd be like, yikes. That's probably not what I'd want to communicate. If I had a brief encounter with a stranger, and when I say brief encounter, I mean my body of work touched someone 700 years from now, I'd probably want them to listen to this podcast and not like unearth me talking about how cool I am and whatever in my music. Right? So I just think about so much of these like people who call themselves artists when they're in fact they're really entertainers. And like the more clothes you take off, the more sensational your stuff is, the more like it's playing on the senses, you know? The more I go, do you ever think from a perspective of like 500 years from now? Someone unearths 500 years from now. Okay, art is a way to describe human experience. So like someone unearths your album 500 years from now, and it happens to be, you know, I don't know,
Brian Funk shakes his butt.
Someone doing the twerk or whatever. And then they go, huh, that's very interesting. So like you had this opportunity to use your musical talents or your talents of creation or communication, whatever, to touch someone, to make a difference. And instead you were just like, nah, I'm just going to take my clothes off, swing on a thing. And like, it's pretty irresistible. We had the best director of photography on this video and best sound engineer. Like, and you just go, you had all these best craftspeople in the world working together to steal somebody's time and attention only to offer them what in return, you know? That's why I don't even feel bad about like being in the ad industry. Because I'm like, we know exactly what we're doing. We're creating a toilet paper ad. We make some music. It's probably going to be like a ukulele, maybe a xylophone, and maybe a whistle.
Yep.
Yeah. Pretty cheery. Gonna get paid some money, and yeah, it's pretty concrete. There's no
people will have soft bumps from their toilet
That's
paper.
correct. That's correct. We're gonna talk about the, you know, how many plies, how many layers. But
there's
in a
no
way,
illusions.
like
You're saying
there's no pretension.
Right.
Like there's no pretension in a way. It's very clear what we're doing, and I kind of like that. Whereas, like as soon as you get into like the art and the show business, it's like, yeah, artists. Yeah, really? Artist? I don't know. Entertainer for sure, but artist, like
best new artist with their hit "Shake Your Butt."
that's right. Yeah, I really like, you know, do you ever watch Rick Beato?
Oh, I love Rick Beato. Yeah.
Yeah. So like you watch him dissect the top charting tracks, and I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Here's a man who has invested he's genuinely a craftsperson. Like he has invested time, commitment, discipline into learning the craft. It's amazing. I mean, he makes me feel like a dilettante.
Yeah.
Even though I'm making money from music, it's like he's a true musician, like all through and through, right? And I think it's brilliant. All he has to do is just go, okay, let's listen to the top 10 right now. He picks up in a split second, like what the chords are, what scale we're in. And he goes, well, that's it. Okay. That's it. It's just like you said, left to our own preferences in a sense and to the tastes of the masses, we quickly descend to the lowest common denominator, to the easiest lullaby, to the most sugary thing that gives the quickest payoff. And I think that life is too precious and the possibilities are way too intriguing and exciting for me to just settle for that. Like we could do more. And, you know, as a funny kind of thing in my journey, it's like I realized that while writing in my journal on my lunch hour, that I'm not going to be, if I'm known for anything, it's probably not going to be the music.
Mm.
I'm quite capable at it. I'm a good producer. I know how to deliver music to a world class advertising campaign. I've done it close to 1,000 times in my career. But as I explore what my inner voice is trying to say, that's not where the chapter ends. Like, that's just one of the chapters. But like, what I really long to do more is have these conversations and use my, I guess, gift of introspection and thinking about things and communication also to maybe unlock some things in other people who are listening so that they don't settle. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they don't settle.
Mm.
Like, they realize if they enlarge their perspective enough, just how precious being alive is, man. It's crazy. It's just absolutely crazy that we're sitting here talking to
Mm.
each other. We understand each other. And there's a bunch of stuff going on inside of us as we speak that, like, it's alive and it's thinking and it's imagining. And I think that's the biggest gift that I can make of the talents that I've been given as a gift,
Yeah.
and that's why this whole 30-day thing started. And I hope that it leads to good fruit, that it inspires others and it makes me a better human also because I have to commit and focus and search for things that were valuable in my own life to share with others. Um,
It's
and
a
that's my album,
it's
and
a great contribution.
thanks,
Yeah.
brother. I really do appreciate it, man.
Yes.
I
I
really
think
do
we need
appreciate it.
more of those, especially as we're being bombarded with things like algorithms that are gonna tempt us. Listen, I start scrolling, and next thing I know, I look up and where was I? I just got sucked into the quicksand too. It's good to have minds like that, perspectives like yours to remind us, because like you said about even just like a business, it's easy to lose the plot and lose the mission.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're
Yeah,
doing
it's
it.
easy. It's easy to lose it if you're just in the short term.
Yeah.
But if you lay under a streetcar, if you take time to be alone at lunch, or to think about what will happen if someone 700 years from now digs this email up, will I be happy with it? I think then there's a better chance of you actually contributing something
Hmm.
um, that is uniquely yours and maybe like coming from the depth rather than like a reactive, superficial contribution that comes from you envying someone else on TikTok and then just doing something that's very much like that. Um, so it's perspective, man. I sound like Gary V. That's funny because I think that's what he says. Perspective. And then he like tells you to do 80 TikToks a day. I got nothing against Gary Vee. I think you can learn something from everybody in the proper
Yeah.
context. But you got to understand your context, and you can never do that unless you take that lunch hour for
Hmm.
yourself. That's the best way I can like put a
Yeah. Well
uh,
put, man. Hey, we've done about 2 hours. We said we were gonna do one,
right on.
so
Dude,
we had a good
honestly, I
time.
told you. I told
Yeah.
you I'm always happy to talk to you, and I'm glad we caught up, and yeah, let's do it again soon sometime.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, we can, of course, tell people listening. I got the show notes, so check the show notes. You can get all the links. But we've also got makingmusicforbrands.com, where Tommy takes you through how to do it. And it is awesome stuff. And I know because I've seen it. And then we've also got TommyZee.co. So that's his stuff.
That's
We've
the
got,
work. Yeah.
that's his
That's
work.
the
And
if you want to basically go,
yeah, it's really
this
cool.
guy teaches about making music for ads. Well, yeah, another
And hear his
YouTuber
work.
who's teaching.
Right.
No, we actually do this. We're
Mm-hmm.
still doing it. Our production company is active. In fact, some of our best students are invited and actually work on some of the ads that I personally work on. So yes, it's more than just an online course. And then if you want to find out about this business, you can sign up makingmusicforbrands.com for a free training. And once you're on my email list, by the way, you are going to receive these daily emails that may not have anything to do with making music for brands, but I send this email to everyone. So if you resonate with maybe, a wider perspective, then you will certainly get it once you sign up, even for the free training about making music for brands. So,
well, it's a good taste of what your world has to offer. So
yeah, and my world is gonna slowly expand to, I'm just gonna keep creating, and I'm gonna see where is it having traction and what are people resonating with, and based on that, I'm gonna start writing the next chapter of my life. So
very cool, man. Well, we'll say goodbye
thanks,
to
Ron.
everybody, and thank you, of course, for being here. You're
Thank you,
always
everyone.
welcome.
Big
Great
hugs.
guest.
Big hugs to everybody. And unless you're feeling like you don't need any more change in your life, everything is good as it is, then you probably don't need to eat lunch alone. But I would suggest at least one day a week where you take time for yourself and ask yourself about where you've been, where you are, and where you want to be, and just enlarge that perspective, 700 years from now, if people on Earth, your body of work, what are they going to come across? And do you feel like what you're doing currently is, worthy of undigging 700 years from now?
Nice. Thank you, sir. And thank you for listening.
Later.